All right, so if you made it here, you did the ed puzzle, and now we are going to take a look at an actual example. So the question that you guys wrote about was, how do traits change over time? Well, that's a really broad question, and you guys know that we make or create models in science class. So we're going to start with a model, and we're going to actually talk about the finches. So it's the finches of the Galapagos Islands. And so like it says, to refine our model and answer our question, let's take a closer look at finches. So we're going to read the background information about finches together. And then we are going to take a look at some graphs. So we already noticed, I told you guys in the 3 stories in the first part of the notes, that the beaks of the finches have changed over time. And you guys have also thought about what specific question can we ask about the finches that can help us answer our big question. And that would just be to put in the name of finches instead of how do traits change over time. So we can make it very specific and say how or why did the finches' beaks change shape or size over time. So let's read about the medium ground finches of Daphne major. So that is in our book if you would like to follow along. I'm just going to do the reading. It is on page 122. So we're talking about the medium ground finches of Daphne major. So the ecosystem. The Galapagos Islands are located in the Pacific Ocean, 1,000 miles off the coast of Ecuador. So there is a picture here. Here is South America, and then the Galapagos Islands are over here in between Central and South America, but near the equator. They are home to many species of plants and animals found nowhere else on Earth, including a number of species of finches. The particular species we are interested in is Gfortis, the medium ground finch. The medium ground finch. In this investigation, we focus on the population of Gfortis found on one of the smaller islands called Daphne major. So down here you have a picture of Daphne major. It's only 1/8 square mile, and it's uninhabited by humans, another island that is not influenced by human interactions because humans can't live there, they can't hunt there or anything. And really the only people that are on this island are a few scientists that work there. So, like I just said, Daphne major is just 1/8 square mile. It's very rocky and very dry. It's near the equator, so it is hot. It has 2 craters in the center of it, and it is uninhabited by humans except for the few scientists that work there. There are no trees on Daphne major, but there are a few low-growing plants and shrubs like bushes and some cacti. Besides the finches, animal life consists of insects and the occasional owl or hawk. So I'll just go over this slide really quick. It is a tiny island, the Galapagos Island chain, which is over here by Central America. It is a part of Ecuador, and it's near the equator. Like I said, the terrain is very rocky and dry. There's 2 craters in the middle, so it's very, think of a rustic landscape, like not a lot, like it said, no trees or anything. And you can see on the picture down here that it is very desolate and not like rich with shrubs and trees and all these different things. It just has the low-lying trees. So like I said, the living things, there's no trees, and some plants that can survive the dry climates do live there, like cacti. And there's insects, finches that feed on the seeds of the plants, and occasionally owls and hawks. So the climate here would be a typical like tropical climate. From January to May, it is a hot, wet season with heavy rains producing 90% of the annual rainfall. And then in June through December is like their winter or their drier, cooler season with only light mists producing small amounts of water. So the story that we're going to take part of or look at with the finches will take place during 1976 to 1978. So back to the reading on page 122. Daphne major is typically has a hot, wet season from January through May, with heavy rains producing 90% of the annual rainfall, and a cool, dry season from June to December, with only light mist producing small amounts of water. So what about the finches? Here we have some finches. So we're looking at medium ground finches, and they get their name from the fact that most of their foraging or their food happens on the ground. Their preferred food is the small soft seeds of 2 different plants, a small shrub and a low-growing spreading plant with thick, fleshy stems and yellow flowers. Some finches with the larger beaks can also eat large, hard seeds of a specific vine that spreads widely throughout the island. Because of the long spines on the seeds of the vine, it is also known as a puncture vine. So it has like spiky points on it. So medium ground finches do produce 1 clutch of young per year with an average of 3 eggs. They usually breed right at the end of the rainy season, which would be at the end of May. And their fledglings or the babies grow to adult size within 1 year. The life expectancy of a medium ground finch is about 16 years of age. So they get to live a little bit older than you guys as freshmen. So the research that we are going to take a look at is in 1973, Peter and Mary Grant, a biologist couple, two biologists got married, first arrived to the island of Daphne Major with the intention of studying why traits and populations change over time. So just like us, they want to know why or how traits change over time. And since then, they have been going back to the island with many of their students to continue collecting data on finches, vegetation, and environmental conditions on the island. You will have plenty of opportunity to look at some of the data they have collected there. And the grants, Peter and Mary, have been the recipients of many prizes and awards for the dedication and contributions to science. So obviously, unfortunately, we cannot go to the Galapagos, so we're just going to take a look at the data that they have collected. So this is an example of some of the data that they did find. This is the medium ground finches of Daphne Major. The finches were born in 1976, and they had an average beak depth size of 9.2 millimeters. So here we have a histogram, which we will learn about. And it shows the number of finches on the y-axis as our dependent variable, what they measured. So they would capture finches. Obviously, they would release them, but they would capture them and then record their beak depth. Sorry. The number of finches is their dependent, and the beak depth is their independent. So it's what's being changed. So the beak depth is measured on the bottom on the X, like I said, and then the average or the median is the 9.2 millimeters. So it is in millimeters. They are very small, smaller than centimeters. So then 2 years later in 1978, the beak depth had increased about 0.5 millimeters, so to 9.7 millimeters. It doesn't seem like a lot, but just even looking at these two pictures, you can see how much stronger the beak looks in 1978. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some data for clues on how or why the finch beaks changed in size over time. So first step is we're going to look over each graph, and then the second step is that we're going to organize the data in order of events, which we'll get to that in a little bit. We're going to use the timeline after you guys look at the data, and we'll do that together. We'll look for patterns that might reveal how their beaks had changed. So we're going to do the first few of them together because I know that there are a few graphs that are a little tricky to understand. So since we are not remote any longer and we are in person, we're going to take a look at this graph first. And it is on page, there we go. The first graph we want to look at is on page number 126. So here we have the average beak depth of the offspring or the babies in millimeters. So this is all the babies on the y-axis, and then on the x-axis, the bottom one, is the average beak depth of both parents, so the mom and the dad. And then the circles all represent the year of 1976, and the triangles represent just the year of 1978. Your first question on graph 4 on page 126, it's also down here, which I'll be typing in, is we want to fill in the chart for the beak depth ranges of the parents for both years. So remember, the parents are on the x-axis down here, and there's a circle representing 1976 and a dotted oval representing 1978, because if you do look, there are some outliers on here, and they wanted to get like the average and make sure their data was accurate. So based on this information, we wanted to know the beak depth ranges of parents in 1976 we'll start with, so the circles. So the lowest range is right about here, and we bring it down because it's about the parents. So it would be about, what, 8.1-ish, 8.2, 8.2 millimeters, and then we go all the way to the end. I would say that's probably around 11 millimeters. So let's fill that in. It doesn't have to be exact. If you can just get it as close as you can, like a good guesstimate is perfectly fine. And then our next one is we want to look at 1978. So the triangles or the dotted oval. So we bring this one down here. I would say it's about 8.9 or 9.0. And then again, all the way to the end with an 11.1. Now we want to do the same with the offspring. So we're going to look at the the y-axis on the side. So the babies in 1976, so the solid line would be all the way down at the bottom here. We bring it across, I would say like 7.6. And then to the top over here, we go across, and I'd say like 10.1. So 7.6 to 10.1. And then we do the same thing with the dotted oval. So this triangle is the one on the bottom. I'd say it's about 8.8. And then at the top here, we go across is about 10.6. You're going to want to write that in your book again on page 126. And then it asks, what is the graph showing us? Please do not write, it's showing us the beak depth. Be specific. We want to know exactly what this is telling us. So it's telling us that the beak depth ranges of the parents pretty much stayed the same. The bottom did go up a little bit. Obviously, you can see they started at 8.2 and then they went up to 8.9. So that's a difference of 0.7 millimeters. But then looking at their babies, that's where it really changed. So in 1976, the babies of these parents had beaks that were only 7.6 millimeters. And look, it went up a whole 1.2 millimeters. So what is this graph showing us? The graph shows that the offspring born in 1978 had beak depths at least 1.2 millimeters larger than the offspring born in 1976. And then we can talk about the parents. So the parents' beak depth also increased, what did I say, 0.7 millimeters in over 2 years, sorry. So it should be something like that. You should have a few good sentences explaining what was going on in these graphs. Don't just tell me, like I said, don't just say like, oh, it's showing me the beak depth. Yes, I know it's showing the beak depth, but like explain to me what was going on. So that was the first graph, and I do want to talk about a few more. So here in this graph, it obviously goes with beak depth on the bottom and the number of finches on the side. The questions is what I wanted to talk about though. So it says, describe the population size of the birds for each beak range you chose in the last question. Well, you're going to pick all of them, but describe the population. So just looking at the populations of ones that ate the small seeds, Okay, yes, correct. Sorry, I'm just looking at the graph again. So the beak depth sizes that ate the small seeds, you could say the population was around 60, or you could say they had a lot more finches than like this yellow one, or the orange one, sorry. So you can say highest or most population, you could say around 55, 60 finches, just getting a good idea of how many finches there were. And then another graph that you guys have. So these ones have little dots or like lines. This is a year. So if you start with the year here, I'll even zoom in. This first line is January. So the J stands for January. Then it's February. Then this longer dot is March, sorry. March, the little dot's April. This big one is May, June, July, August, S for September, October, N for November, and little ones for December. So those letters at the bottom are the months of the year. I think those are the main questions. Oh, so this one, when it says population size, which year was bigger, just say like bigger, smaller, or whichever one was which. Or put like a check or an X or something on which one was bigger. Just make that differentiation. And I think that is it. So then next class, we'll be going over this. So it does need to get done for next class. And then we'll be going over a timeline on what all is changing and what we noticed about the Finches.